All right, awesome. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm super excited to be chatting with my buddies Alan and Adam, Bourbon Fat. But just for anybody who has never heard of a Bourbon Fat, I would love for one or both of you to just give us some quick background.
Sure. Well, we founded ourselves a few years ago and officially launched probably in the last year and a half. And so we have a passion for making work meaningful, helping companies kind of go beyond what is engaging employees and making it more of an experience. So often the measure is around engagement. And we kind of break that down into, well, what leads to that? That's kind of the end game, and what are the things that make an employee happy and find meaning and connection in their work and with their colleagues and with their leaders. And so we value design and human-centered approach to things, and that's how we apply those methodologies to how we work.
That's awesome. Adam, is Adam still on the line? Did he hop on?
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. My Zoom screen only showed Alan and myself, and so I got a little nervous. Sorry about that.
Hiding, no problem.
What about you, man? Would you have anything to add to that?
No, I think he says it well. We call ourselves an employee experience design company, so we're kind of one part traditional consulting firm and one part agency.
Right.
So the focus on design and sort of how we bring that to teams and organizations is really what we're excited about.
That's awesome. So just kind of I think that number one, what you guys do is awesome, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the call today. As a refresher, Food Tribe is a 360 platform that works with restaurants in order to fulfill our mission of connecting good people to good food. So that means just offering tips and tricks and advice for restaurants and food brands to better connect with their audiences. And I think as part of that experience is learning how to better connect with your team and your teammates, right? If you're able to better connect with your teammates, it makes the process of getting your product, your service, your value to your customer, potential customers, a little bit easier. And so, what I would say about, kind of your guys' role, you threw out some phrases that I would love to maybe get a little bit more clarification for someone who has never heard of, employee engagement is something that everyone should have heard, should know about. But if someone has never heard of a human-centered design or design thinking, I would love maybe for, your guys' explanation on what those things are and how they might be applicable to someone, to the average person, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way I think about it is just really it's just a problem solving process that really puts the user as the key focus in the process, and it starts with understanding who your user is, and then you work backwards into a new product or a new service. In our case, changes to how a company operates internally and how they treat and interact with their employees, their teams, and all of that.
Right. That's awesome. And would you have anything to add to that, Alan?
Yeah, I think the thing I would like to stress most about it is really the empathy piece. And so whether it's for your customers, whether it's for your employees, what we do is really help bring that empathy perspective to both sides of that. Yeah. So how do you feel if you're a leader or you're a restaurant owner, how are you making your employees feel? And how are you relating to that? Are you really understanding kind of the ins and outs of what their job looks like day to day?
Right.
To customers, like what are the friction points that your customers are running into, and how many steps are they having to take to do things? And so sometimes removing yourself from that kind of plateau where you're above kind of what's going on, like putting yourself back down into that day-to-day experience,
Right.
and feeling it for yourself, really understanding from that perspective without judgment. And so when we think of the human-centered design, that's really what it is getting back to a place where you connect with the people that you're providing a service to or employment to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love everything that you just said. And I think that a lot of that was rooted in one key word, which is empathy.
Yeah.
Right? I think empathy is something that, as business owners, as colleagues, as friends, like anyone that we have to have a relationship with, understanding, kind of what they have to deal with, and what's going on in their lives, and their interactions and all that kind of stuff, is definitely an opportunity for employees or employers, excuse me, to provide more value or better experience for again the people that they have to touch on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, as a startup founder, building Food Tribe has been a little bit of a challenge because, we're in this place where we're bootstrapping and trying to figure it out, as we go. And so, if we're not able to provide our employees or the people that we're working with, some of those traditional things, right, in terms of, salary or like benefits or, all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, what are some of the things that we can do to make the relationship, to make, to have empathy for, the people that we're working with and what it is that they need, right?
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons why we decided to work with the Bourbon Fat team again, right? Is to develop processes and developing an employee experience that is, going to make our team want to, continue to work with Food Tribe and to continue to want to learn things, which is what it's all about. We all work for people that, we can grow with and that we can learn from. And so I guess my next question is, mostly around, I guess your background or your guys' background in the restaurant and the hospitality space. And, particularly I would love to hear, what your guys' thoughts are around employee experience in the restaurant industry.
Sure. Well, personally, I mean, I've just growing up, I kind of grew up in kitchens and back areas of restaurants and bars. My mother was a barmaid and a cook. And so I was just kind of always around that environment. So I kind of always got the behind the scenes kind of feel for it and kind of empathy myself for the people that work in the industry.
Right.
And kind of knowing the chaos that goes on, but chaos that goes on there. And so I always just had an appreciation from that.
That's awesome. Yeah, working in restaurants is an interesting gig. I waited tables throughout college, which was a ton of fun, and that's how I got my start. I mean, if there's one thing that I noticed, and you tell me, I just noticed that there was a lot of turnover, like a high turnover in the restaurant industry. And I always wondered why. I mean, are there any like things that maybe you can kind of think of offhand, which lead to so many people like leaving their jobs in the restaurant or hospitality space?
It's interesting because we haven't had clients per se yet from the restaurant business, and so we did some research recently, kind of collectively online, trying to dig into this a little bit more, and that was one of the key themes that came out of it, was kind of turnover and absenteeism, and
right,
digging into why that exists and why that happens. And so seems like there's a lot of different possible explanations for that. One is just kind of the, I think a lot of places are looking for kind of service help, and the people that are looking for those jobs often tend to be like college students like yourself, or kind of first time workers. So, just turning 16 sort of thing, want to earn some money to have that freedom and independence from their parents, but also having not a connection to work yet.
Right.
And so maybe not experiencing that sense of loyalty that employers would like to see. Because, you know, when we were 16 and we were young and we were starting our first jobs, probably was not our first priority in our lives at that
Right.
time. And so trying to get that, how do you get somebody to connect while they're there, and giving it all they got for the short time that you probably had them?
Right.
Important. Turnover, it seemed like there was, you know, there were two distinct things. So I think a lot of people that were kind of sharing, and we talked about in our collection, it was probably about 80 different respondents to this. And there was a key difference between the places that said they were experiencing high turnover versus the ones who were not. And so looking at the ones that said, you know, we actually don't have a turnover problem, we don't have an absentee problem, and asking them, well, why is that? What do you do? And some of the core things that they focused on were kind of having that empathy for the people that they hire and understanding, getting really to understand their situations. Why is it that they're looking for work? Why is it they want to be in this business? What are their aspirations in this? Having that flexibility with their schedules, providing them really good training. Some of the places that seem to have a problem with turnover, it didn't seem like they're expecting everybody to kind of come in with this experience, right? And having worked in kitchens before and knowing about food and having this long, you know, list of prerequisites.
Right.
Whereas the places that were keeping their employees, they were investing that time and energy to take those people that didn't necessarily have the experience or the skills, but kind of had that same value system or appreciation for customers or kind of the work ethic, and working with them to develop those other areas. So those were some of the key differences that came out.
Wow. That's, I mean, that was great. And that was really insightful, Alan. I appreciate you doing that research for us, and, you know, just being so thoughtful and explaining that. You know, sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. The first place that my head went, you know, as you were explaining that, was, you know, where I was at when I was 16. So getting a little anecdotal, when I was 16, I was working in the drive-through at Taco Bell. And all my friends from high school used to come, and they would want like free tacos, and, you know, I was always I was always that guy, right?
I would have been one of those people.
And so, you know, but, you know, thinking about it, I you know, I was busting my butt for not very much money. You know, I was lucky enough that the job was like super close to my home. And so, you know, it wasn't that big of a commitment to get there. But in a place like LA, right, where, you know, getting from your job can be a challenge, you know, I was actually, you know, very lucky. You know, but that being said, you know, especially, again, I worked in restaurants throughout college, but I bounced around a lot. Again, and I think a lot of the reasons behind that was because maybe I didn't feel that sense of investment, that empathy that, you know, I wanted to see, right? You know, it's super important, you know, especially if you're learning something, you know, if you kind of put yourself back into a situation where you're learning something for the first time, it can be frustrating. You know, you might be dealing with like a million different things. And, you know, if you don't have somebody that's willing to be patient and teach you and, you know, kind of show you the path, or, you know, what's on the other side, it might just be easier to leave. Right. And I think with the restaurant industry, you know, unfortunately, it just becomes easy to do because, you know, getting these jobs maybe isn't, you know, that big of a challenge, or, you know, because maybe a lot of these companies aren't investing into, you know, making these into roles that people want to stay with long term, right? It could be, you know, kind of a bunch of those things. So
yeah, so I think it's really interesting when you talk about, you know, I guess the vibe and whether people are willing to sort of invest in you, because there's also seems to be like mistakes are costly in a restaurant environment, right? If you're messing up orders or phone calls or food, it's a big deal. And so having someone new is a challenge for obvious reasons. But one of the things that stood out when we were talking to people is that the people that said that, no one left threw around the word family a lot, right? So if you work in a small, small area, small business, where you guys are with each other constantly and working really, really hard. I think it's the other thing is that the work is very challenging. Like you mentioned, it's for what you get. So you have to be really invested in a lot of the things that are not pay and schedule, right? You have to be really invested in either what you're doing, the work you're doing, or the people you work with.
Right.
And so I think that at least from our earlier research, what we can tell is that the ones that can help, are better at creating that family environment are going to have a better chance at, keeping people happy and keeping them there. And then won't have to go through that training problem in the long run. Once you get people that want to stay, it really becomes less of an investment in training somebody once a week versus, longer timeline.
Totally. And I mean, that's just, everybody wants that connection, right? It's just like, I mean, obviously you want a job so that, you can take care of yourself, take care of your family. But on I think even deeper level, I mean, everyone wants to advance and they want to achieve things and they want to have a good time or good experience while they do it. Right.
Yeah.
So if you have the ability to, take care of yourself, take care of your family, learn, develop and grow, and also like enjoy the people that you're working with or the experience. I mean, I don't know about you, but that makes me want to like just continue to give back and continue to give like excellent work, because there's a sense of fulfillment. And I think that's what everyone wants. Like no one's different in that case, right?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that element of compassion and just hearing some of these kind of successful owners or managers were doing in terms of, helping people with their situations outside of their life that were interfering with them getting to work. So if it was a transportation problem, like working something out amongst the team or them as a manager to be able to help in that situation. Right. So that wasn't a friction point for that employee or those employees anymore to be able to get there. Or if it was something around childcare, kind of that, again, like a family, people pitching in and kind of helping where they can. And at the same time, there's this element of empowerment,
right,
that was coming through, which from a few of the places that were using that kind of terminology with the family, when they were talking about looking for new employees, it was starting with the folks that they already had, and even with their customers, considering them to be a part of the family too, for recommendations from that network. So rather than posting externally and looking for hires off the street, they were taking the recommendations of people saying, hey, I've got a cousin, or, like my little sister is available, or I know this, I worked with this person somewhere else and they're looking for work. And so like having them vouch for another person to bring them in, one, like they've already got a connection. And now it's a little bit of accountability too for that person, because I'm not going to recommend someone that isn't going to hold their weight or that's going to call out
right
all the time or do things. So by kind of turning over a little bit of that hiring and recruiting process to the team itself would be really, really helpful.
That's awesome. Now, I mean, I think that goes down to, I think that's an expansion of, again, empathy.
Mm-hmm.
But then, also, I think that team dynamic, that culture dynamic that we're talking about, right? Like understanding what makes your team tick and then giving them the ability to, go after that and get that, right? And being a support system and, letting them know that is the culture that you are looking to establish as one of helping and one of family. So I think that's great. And I would love to, I guess, hear like a practical example of that, in terms of like, human-centered design as it relates to, the restaurant experience. Like, what are some ways that me as a restaurant owner, I mean, if it's for my employees or if it's for my customers, what are some ways that I can build in that culture of, putting them first and, me second?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the human-centered design sort of practice applies to whether or not you want to get new customers or kind of what we're advocating is that also how do you want to address and improve your team. And so if you care about how your team operates, the best thing that any manager, leader, owner can do is really spend some time talking to them face to face and getting to know their challenges, their behaviors, their attitudes, really, really closely. And it sounds ridiculously simple, but it's very rare. It's very rare for leaders to take the time to really dig in without judgment, without any preconceived notion about what you should be feeling, or whether you should be having those feelings or not, and just really listen. And so if you do that with a customer or you do that with, excuse me, an employee, you're going to be really surprised when people open up about what their challenges are. And if you take that info as data, as something that you can use rather than dismissing it and saying like, well, that person's just like a pain in the ass. Like if you really take it to heart, what you have is data to change your environment or your product or your service, whatever it is that you're offering.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough for really just spending some time asking people how they feel about how their day, what challenges they are, and really digging in and listening.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think one like really tangible piece of advice, and just kind of remembering this from kind of growing up in that environment and kind of working when I was younger and in the restaurant area as well, but there tends to be a lot of like the side conversations that happens. And so rather than kind of addressing kind of an issue or a topic, it's kind of a side comment over here to another person that's maybe not involved with it. And, it just kind of spreads itself. And I think if, managers and owners kind of can take that, like the high road, and like Adam is saying, but just bring people together collectively and having like a really transparent, authentic conversation where everyone gets to have a voice, and things aren't hidden and kind of percolating around the environment, which can hurt the culture. It's just better to get it all out on the table. And if you can pick one specific area that you want to focus on, like the last couple of weeks we've been seeing an increase in call outs for shifts, and just focus on that one thing and make it very solution oriented. So clearly there's a problem with scheduling or something, but we want you to hear from you and listen to you on, why might this be happening? What are some of the root causes? And then let's figure out a solution together that will help decrease this in the future. Yep. And so kind of taking that collective, collaborative approach can be really helpful.
Yep. I think what I liked about what you said there, Alan, I mean, obviously I liked everything that you said. But one of the things that struck a chord with me is, I don't think that you said this explicitly, but that it's okay for management to have standards, right? Yeah. It's okay to, know what you want out of your employees. But, as part of that, like, sense of ownership, you do have to listen, right? And you have to say like, hey, this is the goal. And that's leadership, right? It's like, this is the goal. This is where we are. This is what I'm noticing. How do we get there? And like, being open to that feedback from your team, it sounds like is really, really, really important in terms of human-centered design. Would you guys say that that's correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. A team that doesn't have candor is in trouble, right? And we see this in any industry, right? So when a team can't speak honestly about what their challenges are because they won't be well received, it never, you're operating at less than your potential for sure. Because it's key to doing good work, is trusting the people you work with. But I think the other thing you said too is really, really important, is that when we advocate positive employee experiences, accountability is part of that experience. Right. Like, we need accountability. It's a good thing. It brings out the best in our performance. There are companies where employees are happy but not held accountable, and performance suffers. But employees that are accomplishing things and are well respected and listened to, those teams outperform other teams every time. So high standards are absolutely essential if you're going to run a really, really quality business. But people also like high standards. If you get the right talent, the talent that fits your culture, with those standards in place, you can have both. They're not mutually exclusive.
And using those standards and expectations as a source of inspiration, rather than a place of fear. So oftentimes it's people can get behind a vision and they can get behind expectations, but when you're supported in trying to reach those, and you're getting the right training, you're getting the right coaching, you're not being criticized over mistakes when it's not malintent, but it's, you tried something different or something new that you were trying to do, not being beat up over that.
Yeah.
Those are kind of factors into that piece. Whereas if you're, being told, if you don't do this, you're going to suffer this and you're going to be fired, and like kind of hanging those things over people's heads just adds anxiety and stress, which just brings down their performance. And so just assuming that people want to do their best and then supporting them to do that, inspiring them to do that, there's a subtlety there that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and it is a subtlety, right? And I think that is it's a training, and you can get better at it. And so that happens, overnight. But yeah, I agree. And I think another thought that just kind of popped up. I don't remember where I read this article, but they or which thought leader it was, but they just talked about the differences between a team and a family, as it relates to an organization. And what I would say is that, I think that this particular thought leader was advocating more for treating your organization as a team rather than a family. But I would almost argue that there is like this back and forth, right? Where it's like, hey, like this is us, going towards like these team goals. And well, you know what, like these team goals are really important, but you are also a person that, has value, that has needs, that this work stuff is not the end all be all, right? Like I'm here because I support you. I want us to care for each other, and I want us to improve, as a result of this relationship. And so, I think that, just having kind of both of those be a priority, or baking both of those things into your business, regardless of what vertical, you're working in, is almost the first step of human-centered design. At least from a company level, is making that your employees understand that both of those two things are important. It's like, hey, we care about you as a person, and we also care about development. So how do we align both of those two things together? Which, I think is what every company wants, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I would say, I think, the family comparison is super interesting. I think there are lots of elements of the family that would be nice if organizations and teams had more of that. But at the end of the day, if you can fire your cousin,
right. Well, that's what I was trying to get.
Firing is right.
That's not a family anymore, though, right?
Right. Well, you still have to do it if you run a business. So it's this fine line of respect and sort of giving people the benefit of the doubt, and really trying to investing in their own personal success
right
outside of you. That certainly has a family element to it, but the sort of accountability and you know, the nature of making sure that people are actually pulling their weight in the group, I think is, you know, something that is uniquely business.
Yeah. That's one thing too that adds just to the credibility and respect of leadership too, because while you want to have that element of inspiring and helping everybody kind of reach those expectations, if you're not dealing with true poor performance issues,
Right.
it's not visible that you're, you know, the person that does continually call out all the time, or that is on their phone in the corner the entire shift, you know, not bussing tables, not doing what they're supposed to be doing. If you consistently and visibly let that go and still have that person be a part of the team, that is going to hurt your overall culture as well. So you do have to deal with those issues.
Yeah.
By doing that, it makes those people that are performing really well, makes them feel more valued, because now they're seeing, okay, they're not going to let this person kind of distract what we're trying to do or bring us down and you know, that way, or, you know, hurt the restaurant or hurt our tips, or all those things that are important to those people that are there for the right reasons, performing the way they're supposed to.
You know, it almost sounds like to me that, you know, incorporating human-centered design into, you know, any organization is really about the collective over the individual, right?
Yep.
It's like, how do we have the most amount of empathy for the most amount of people, you know, and how does that, like, you know, serve us all together, which is super interesting because it does start at the individual level, right? And individually embracing those values and individually, you know, making that choice. So, wow, that was really interesting, guys. I'm enjoying this conversation. I feel like it can go, we can keep going. I guess, well, so, I mean, for full disclosure to everyone, again, you know, Bourbon Fat's going to be helping Food Tribe in designing our employee experience and, you know, helping us, you know, develop more empathy in, you know, our company. But I would love maybe for you guys to, you know, touch on some of the different ways or some of the different products and services that people can, you know, if they're interested in incorporating, designing a better employee experience to their company. What are some of the ways that they can work with Bourbon Fat?
Yeah. So we, you know, it generally starts with, you know, companies that have a challenge. So in your instance, you know, it's growth, and how do you bring people into the culture that you want to establish? For bigger companies, it's, you know, we want to make a change, or we've noticed that a whole section of the population isn't engaged or happy with their jobs. What do we do about that? And so those are kind of the, you know, a lot of the starting points for when we start to interact with clients. And in that process, we teach and advocate this human-centered design research process. We interview tons and tons of people and drill down to kind of what those insights are, and really get to the bottom of the feelings and behaviors around whatever the change or whatever is desired for the, you know, the next phase of work. And so the output of that could be a number of different things. It could be us teaching leadership about just applying these methods and so that it keeps to fuel the culture. It could be us creating experiences, even products and you know, tangible things that leaders can use to help continue that conversation, that communication. Alan, anything else?
I mean, we hear a lot from employers. They have that, what they say to their employees is often, you know, we heard you, right? And so they want to get to that point of, we heard you. And I think where we help is that we kind of take them beyond hearing, and we really help them with the listening part of it.
Right.
Because sometimes just hearing, you're getting kind of white noise feedback. And we kind of help people really learn that art of how to ask the right questions to begin with. that are tying back into the values and the things that you want to dig into, and then really help you listen to what matters in that, and then to go even farther and dig a little bit more to get more of that voice that's behind it, so that it's not as empty. And so you can start to craft a story and start to really understand a problem. And so I think one of the main things we help do is like really diagnose what the problem is. So oftentimes, people present a problem and we help break that down and get more into, well, is that really the problem? Or is it something deeper than that? And then how do you bring people in to collectively work together on it, the end users that are being affected by it?
Right.
How do you make them a part of the solution rather than something that's just pushed to them, and you hope that it hits the mark, And so, on our site now, we have some products available to kind of help get at the kind of the starting points of that. So if you're someone that's not even sure of what employee experience it is, you've never heard of it before, we have a card deck, which is sort of a diagnostic that helps you very quickly sit with your employees and say, I feel this, I don't feel this, and put those into piles, and then start working from those problem areas that come out of that, and solutioning ideas around those areas. We have a kit that goes even deeper into that as well, which gets you into the kind of brainstorming and ideation and collaboration with those employees. And then we do that in person as well. So a lot of times I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know how to, ask good questions by employees. I mean, some people are intimidated by having those conversations with employees, and we can go in and help do that research for you, and then give those skills as well, so that you can do it when we're not there.
That's great. So, I mean, almost, you guys take human-centered design elements and allow organizations to, again, like better optimize their business, to find problem areas and to improve, right? And that's focusing on the people and the processes, which is beautiful. I mean, that is great. I mean, obviously, you guys are experts in people and, running or working with organizations. Definitely let people know how to get in touch with you guys if they're, interested in learning more about Bourbon Fat and implementing employee experience design in other workflows. How can they get in touch with you guys?
Very easy. Bourbonfat.com.
Boom. If I'm
Right there.
I was going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I've been spelling bourbon with an A for the better part of, I think, since I turned 21. So I just, I found out.
We don't earn bourbonfat.com. We don't own that one.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're going to find there. But the traditional spelling, yeah, we own that one.
Okay, all right. So super embarrassing, but yes,
maybe we're wrong. Maybe we got it wrong. I don't know. Either way, we like the way it looks.
No, but super excited to be working with you guys and appreciate your time today. We definitely want to have you guys back out, especially as we start implementing, some of your guys' philosophies and the food tribe. It would be great to, let our audience know, let some of our clients and, potential clients know, what it was like incorporating, again, human-centered design into our organization. Again, I would love to stress to everyone that's listening that human-centered design, again, is about people and, again, diagnosing and fixing problems. And so, you can apply that to different levels of your organization, from like employee experience to, customer fulfillment, the way that you deal with your clients and your customers, to the way that you deal with your vendors. And it's just about, understanding these things and, again, understanding the way that people work. Right. So, super excited. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Unless you guys had anything burning that you wanted to let our audience know, definitely just, wanted to say thank you again and ciao.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
All right, guys. Thanks again.
All right. Have a good one, man.
All right. Later. Bye.